de este webinar. We'd love to know where you're from and how you found out about this webinar. There's also a Q&A section where we would encourage you to put questions for Julia. We are not going to address them probably till the end of the webinar because we have a lot of material to cover. Si tienen preguntas en inglés o en español, por favor, los ponen en el área que dice preguntas y vamos a contestarles hasta el final del programa. Well, Julia, welcome so much, and I want you all to notice Julia's website, juliadelpalacio.com, and there you'll find all kinds of links and information on Julia and on her other web presences, which for us now is all we've got almost, except for a select group of people. So Julia, let's start talking about Veracruz. Okay. And Son Jarocho, por favor.
All right, well, thank you for having me, and thank you all for watching. It's really, very interesting to see, how this is developing and how we can be together on different platforms and keep sharing information and sharing music and just, sharing a little about who we are. Son Jarocho is the music, dance, and culture from southern Veracruz, which is on the Gulf of Mexico. And the Son Jarocho tradition is really not only native of that part of southern Veracruz, but what we call the Sotavento region, which also covers some parts of Oaxaca and a little bit of Chiapas as well. And it's a type of music, and it's really a whole culture that has three main roots: Spanish music, Afro-Caribbean, and Mexican indigenous rhythms and music. And some people even call it an Afro-diasporic genre, because lately in the past few years, there has been a lot of emphasis on how Son Jarocho was really born out of, or really has many African, both West and North African influences. And so we're looking at a Son Jarocho that has a lot more of African than it used to be believed. So that's exciting. And there have been a lot of new, developments in research regarding that. The Son Jarocho is played with mainly plucked and rhythm instruments. We call them, the rhythm instruments, we call them jaranas. And the jaranas are the main instrument in Son Jarocho. Is the small guitar to your, I guess, right of your screen. We'll show a different family, like the jarana is a family of instruments, and we'll show that. But we also have the plucked instrument, the requinto, which is on your left side, and that's what leads the melody of the music. So it's usually 4 strings, and if you were in a rock band, this would be the lead guitar. Mm-hmm. Then we have the bass, which is we call it leona, and it's on the next to the harp to the right, and that's also 4 strings, and it's basically the base of the music. And then we have the harp, which in the traditional Son Jarocho is not played that much. The harp is not used that much. It's used a lot in the more what we call the folkloric, like the folkloric ballet style of Son Jarocho. That's a little more commercial, and that's a little more, if you will, like a little more for show. And there, the harp is very, very prevalent, and you tend to see harp players who are very virtuosos, and they do these crazy things with the harp that are really interesting and beautiful. But if you go to the small rural areas of Veracruz, you don't tend to see that. You tend to see a lot of the requinto and the jarana and the leona, and then you see a lot of these percussive instruments that we also have here, like the pandero, which is a tambourine that's on the bottom, and has 6 sides, and is very traditional, very particular of this kind of music. You don't really find it anywhere else in Mexico. And then we have the marimbol, which some people in other parts of Latin America call it marimbula. And it's basically like a thumb piano, but bigger. And you would sit on the marimbol and kind of like lean forward and play it, pluck it with your fingers. And the marimbol is a more recent addition to son jarocho. It's not, son jarocho is about 300 years old. We have some, documents in archives that talk, in the 18th century about son jarocho and how it was banned by the Inquisition because, it led to lewd dances and people dancing together and kind of having fun. And of course that wasn't, people weren't really allowed to have fun, I guess. And you see a lot of these instruments. I mean, the jarana is basically a Baroque guitar. It's really a Baroque guitar. And so some of the instruments haven't changed all that much. The instrumentation of the ensemble hasn't changed that much, but the marimbol is a new addition. So it's not something that you would find, 100 years ago. It's more like from the past 20 to 30 years. And people coming from other parts of Latin America to Veracruz and adding their own, instrumentation, their own styles and their own inspiration. And now suddenly the marimbol is very, very prevalent in son jarocho. And then you have the quijada, or the donkey jawbone, which it's truly a donkey jawbone, and you would find it too in like the Afro-Peruvian tradition as well. So if you've heard Peruvian music, Afro-Peruvian music, you most likely have heard the quijada, and that's very much used in son jarocho as well. And then, yeah, that's about it. We have the güiro, which is very traditional in many, many parts of Latin America. So son jarocho is really performed, if you will, or played is more the word, in the fandango, what we call the fandango. And the fandango is the traditional celebration of a community in son jarocho. And fandango is also used in many other traditions, and it means, party, celebration. And in the fandango, people gather around wooden platforms like this one. There's, in a traditional fandango, you would see only one platform. Here is a fandango that Emily put together some years ago in Central Park in New York City. And then that's me a few years ago. And we got together in Central Park and did a little bit like a demonstration of a fandango. So for people who were walking around, they would see like, okay, so this is what a fandango would look like. But in reality, or traditionally, people gather around the wooden platform and play and sing and dance for hours and hours and hours. And mainly because in the fandango and in the son jarocho tradition, there is a very strong practice of poetic improvisation, and people would just start improvising poetry as they sing, or as they're singing. So you would be playing music, singing, and then suddenly you would think of a verse for a particular song and you would sing it. And so if you have very good improvisers at a fandango, you could be playing the same song for hours on end because they're coming up with new poetry over and over and over again. And so, I've been in fandangos in Veracruz where you play, for example, La Bamba, and we're going to talk a little bit about La Bamba, which is a traditional son jarocho, in case you didn't know, and where they play La Bamba for, an hour and a half, and it's the same song. And the dancers change. So you would get, as a dancer, you would get on the platform, dance for a little bit, and then somebody would replace you. And that's, it happens over and over and over again. And you get your moment on the tarima, which is the wooden platform. And then somebody else would come and they get a chance to dance. And that's how it goes. So this is our little fandango in New York City. And we're also going to talk a little bit about how son jarocho has spread out around the world, which is also a very exciting development.
Julia, I also wanted to mention that the tarima is really an instrument of percussion in the performance.
Exactly, yeah. So we make music, and you will see it in the videos. We make music as we're dancing. And so some people call the tarima, the wooden platform, the heart of the fandango, because the dancers are doing, a very rhythmic, percussive sound that will sort of resemble a heartbeat. So the types of jarana, and this happens also with the requinto, you have different sizes, and the lower or the smallest you get, the higher the pitch. And obviously the other way around. And so you have the family, we call it the families of instruments. So this is a family of jarana, and you would get the family of requinto. And this is, just an example. Usually the smaller jaranas are played by children. And so here is an ensemble that we put together in New York City all those years ago. You can see, the jarana played by Cecilia, who's wearing the red and white, and she has a jarana primera, which is the smallest jarana. Then all the way to your left, you can see Juan Carlos. He's playing the leona, which is the base of the music. And then to your right, he's sort of facing the back, but there's Gabriel with jaranas. And then of course, in the middle, you have the donkey jawbone, which is, also central in the son jarocho. And behind, Veronica is playing the violin, which is also very much played in son jarocho more now, or more before, and now it's being sort of people are bringing it back to the fandango after for a few years it wasn't played all that much, but now people are playing more like the fiddle, like the rural version of a violin. And yeah, so that's our little fandango. So the context of son jarocho. Emily can also help me out here a little bit with what we're talking about when we're talking about the context of son jarocho. But what I can say is that son jarocho is a practice that lends itself to participation and to community building. If you're learning to play son jarocho, you can learn the basics of the music fairly easily, like the basic steps for the dance or the basic strumming fairly easily, which allows you to participate in the fandango. And so people tend to be very attracted to the fact that you don't have to be a professional musician. You don't have to be a virtuoso to be able to be part of it. And if you don't want to play music, you can also watch, but you can feel as a part of the environment that's happening within the fandango, which is a festive environment. But also, the fandango is kind of like life. There are moments of great celebration. There are moments of tension when, let's say, two poets are kind of competing and improvising, and one of them kind of attacks the other, and then they respond. And, so there are, the fandango has life. It's like breathing, and people feel very much attracted to that feeling of like we are in a community. We are part of a whole. And so because of the improvisational aspect of it, people have started to use the fandango as a means for political protests. And so they're composing verses about from immigration reform to the elections, a lot of verses against Donald Trump. There have been, verses against, or just, protesting the, lack of democratic process in Mexico, in other places. And so in a way, the son jarocho and the fandango tradition is very much alive and is very much changing all the time. And a fandango, in terms of the instrumentation and what people bring to the fandango and play, tends to be very traditional in some ways. Like you will always have your jaranas and your requintos, but also innovative in the sense of like, okay, if you are, I don't know, in France, somebody might bring a clarinet or an accordion. If you are in Puerto Rico, some people might bring congas. Like, people are bringing their own idiosyncrasies into the fandango, and therefore that's what makes it, again, like a very much, like it's a tradition that's very much alive. But what I always say is that it doesn't matter how son jarocho changes due to where it's being played. The fandango, the practice of the fandango and respecting some of the structure of the fandango is what keeps it grounded. You can always go back to the fandango, and that's what takes you back to the root and to the tradition of it. So it's alive, it's changing, but it's very much still what it used to be. So here we have a traditional fandango from Veracruz. I don't think you're muted, Emily. You need to unmute yourself. Can we have a little more volume?
So that sounded like La Bamba.
Yep.
How did La Bamba make it across to American pop music? Do you have any idea?
Well, first it made it across to Mexico City from Veracruz, and it was adopted as a, you know, like an hymn or an anthem of Mexican identity during the 1950s, when the Mexican government was making a strong effort to present these very particular image to the world. Like, we are a colorful nation, we are happy, we are, you know, doing these incredible dances. And with the folkloric ballet company by Amalia Hernandez, which is the most important folkloric ballets in Mexico, they created these like little like packaged version of every single tradition, or not, I don't know if every single one, but a lot of the traditional musics from Mexico. So if you go to see a show by Amalia Hernandez, a company, you will see a dance from Jalisco, or a dance from Nayarit, a dance from, you know, different parts. And in Son Jarocho, La Bamba was very much adopted as one of these songs that was performed by the ballet, and you know, in movies it was performed, etc. And so it became a very well-known songs for Mexicans. And then it traveled to California and, you know, the Mexican American community. And I guess, you know, when Richie Valens was trying to, you know, we've all seen that movie, right? So it's like they were trying to like make him, you know, okay, so you're a rock star, you're gonna be a rock star, but you still need to have your own flavor, you know. You're gonna be a brown rock star, so yeah, like La Bamba, you know. So
okay, let's see Julia dancing now. So Julia, this is the more traditional repertoire, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the first song that was played is very, very traditional. It's called La Guacamaya, and you would dance it, I mean, in the fandango and on stage, because this was more like well, I wasn't on a stage, but it was more like a performance. You would dance like a guacamaya, which is a macaw, you know, the bird, the big, like a parrot. Yeah. So you would, you know, dance like you're doing the zapateado, which is the dance, and then you do like you're flying. The second song is called Los Cotorritos, or the Little Parrots, and is original by Zenén Seferino, who's a master son jarocho musician and singer and improviser. And he and my band Radio Jarocho, we recorded an album together, and that song is in that album. So that was a new song, but very much sounding like son jarocho, because he comes like straight from the root, like he's the real deal, you know. To me, son jarocho for me is more like it's a borrowed tradition. I don't come from Veracruz, I come from Mexico City, but it's something that I've been doing for many, many, many years, and something that feels already like it's a part of me. But being with the people who come from there, who, you know, were born there and live and breathe it, it's obviously something very important.
Okay, so now we're moving on to something that you're calling more of an innovation. Is that correct?
Well, I call it more like, you know, a mix of different traditions too, with son jarocho. So I would sometimes, when I'm performing, I will use movements or body language that comes from other dances. So in this case would be more like a little bit of flamenco. It has a little bit of flamenco flavor.
Emily, is it possible to get your screen bigger?
It was very beautiful.
Thank you. You can find all those videos on YouTube. So if you wanna see them, the whole thing, yeah.
Right. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the political and activist element. And one thing that struck me when we were presenting Fandango was just how this was really on the level of a youth movement. Fue como un movimiento político, no solamente cultural. It was political. It was not simply a cultural adornment. I was in Veracruz at a rancho, and there were hundreds of people coming from all over participating. It really had the feeling of a movement. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then about the border, what's happening on the border, which is so powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, of course. So like I was saying before, the fandango, because of its improvisational nature and its welcoming nature, has attracted people from all over the world, like literally. And it has been sort of, the fandango itself, transplanted into many parts of the world, like going from, you know, of course, the United States, many parts of the United States, Canada, but also France and Germany and Switzerland, and also Japan. Like it's a really a movement that has you know, just what do you call it, just is being practiced in many parts of the world because of its nature. And at the border, what is happening, a visionary man whose name is Jorge Castillo, he came up with the idea of doing a borderline fandango. So like you saw in the videos of the actual fandango, the first video that we showed you, the actual fandango, you have two people dancing on the tarima. And what they do at the border fandango is that they have one person dancing on one side of the border and another person dancing on the other side of the border. And this happens in the border of San Diego and Tijuana. And so the idea is that, you know,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Me, sorry. Okay.
That, you know, the border, like music transcends all borders, and that we can still be a community despite the wall and despite the fence. And so the borderline fandango happens every year in May. And of course, this year is not going to happen in person, but we did do a little video that will show you where, you know, we're still having our little border fandango this year in our from our homes. So this is the actual border fandango.
Julia, I did not mean to cut you off that way, but I'm looking at the clock and realizing, and I want to really urge all of you to go to Fandango Fronterizo and take a look at that entire video, because the build up to getting to the border, walking to the wall is extremely powerful. I want to move on to the COVID Fandango, and then we'll have a little time left for questions. So sorry to be speeding things along.
I could spend hours.
Yes. That was wonderful. That was our friend Claudia Valentina. Si me quedo en mi casa and mi cuidaré. So it's really fitting into that the whole structure of the music. So I think we have a little time for some questions. Let's see if there's anything in the Q&A or anything in the chat. I don't see anything. So Ellen, do you have a question? Get things going. I think we need to unmute you. Yeah. Any thoughts or I can't unmute you, Ellen. I tried. I can't hear you. So Julia, let's just talk a little bit more. How old are children when they start? ¿A qué edad empieza a bailar los niños y las niñas?
I would say since before they're born, if they're, if they're in the communities. I mean, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I danced all through my pregnancy. Like 2 weeks before I was due, I was still dancing. And so, I think children are just, tend to want to do what you're doing. And so they start very, very, very young. And so it's something that people grow up with, and they learn. So Jarocho is something that they learn from their parents, from their siblings, from their grandparents. It's not, now a lot of people are teaching it a little more formally, but there's no like school of Son Jarocho. It's more like you learn as you watch and as you practice.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. And we're just at time. So I want to encourage everybody, visit Julia at juliadelpalacio.com. And thank you all so much for participating. And I want to welcome you all back on Monday, when I'm also going to be presenting another one of my strong cultures, which is Jewish cooking. So that will be next Monday. And tune in for all of these wonderful programs, which are listed on Facebook, but they're also available on Vimeo. And we will post that link. And we have a question and we have a chat. Here we go at the last minute. Everybody is great. Just wanted to tell you the dancing is beautiful. I am so intrigued by the improvisational political poetry aspect. I would love to see a live performance. Do you know of any groups in Western New York? That's right. New York is more than a city. Julia, do you go north? I know you go east. Do you go north?
Yeah. I do not know, unfortunately, any groups in Western New York, but I mean, this whole thing with, the COVID crisis and everything is horrific in many ways, but I think in some ways it has, at least me, like it has allowed me and it has encouraged me to take a look at stuff that I wasn't looking at, people, things that people are posting online. And there are opportunities to see new things, I think, because more people are posting more things. So if we're able to, well, we have your name, so I can at least forward some links of, for example, Senen Seferino, who I talked about and who we recorded an album with. He went to Trump Tower in 2016 and just stood there and started playing music and just improvising some verses regarding the elections and Donald Trump and all of that. And so I could forward that and another, a few more examples. So if you want to just, I don't know if it's possible to do like a private little chat and send us your email, or we have Valerie's information, but I'd be happy to share that.
Absolutely. And I just put your website on the chat window. So everybody, please go there, look for Julia's contact me form and ask her. She's extremely open. And Valerie just put all her info on the Q&A so the panelists can see it. Okay, thank you all so much, Julia. Fue un gran placer realmente reunirnos. It's so great to be back and working with you. There are so many folk artists in New York. And I wanted to mention that I worked with Julia when I was the director of Mano a Mano, Mexican Culture Without Borders. And that organization now is being very capably led by Juan Aguirre. Go to www.manoamano.us. They partnered with us in publicizing this event. And thank you all. Thanks everybody who promotes culture. Culture is life. We need bread, but we need roses. Necesitamos pan, pero también rosas. Okay. Goodbye all.
Everybody.
Thank you.